Hello everyone, thank you for viewing, and just a quick note before we begin this video today. This will be an in-depth critique session with Adam Duff and myself, but I'd love to encourage anyone who hasn't entered this to continue to watching and kind of just more or less listen to it as if it was a podcast. There's just lots of, I feel there's a lot of helpful information here that could be beneficial to a wide range of people looking to improve their art skills here. Alright, so let's begin. So just a quick note on the brief for this contest. It was basically this was a template I made, and it was open for interpretation, basically, whether you want to use it or make your own. But the idea is to make a gang of sky pirates, and that was basically it. It was completely open from there, so time period setting, it's all up to you, and that's why I have it broken into so many different categories to work from, to build the crew, the weapons, their environment, as well as fully flesh out their ship. So yeah, let's take a look at this. So again, we'll just kind of go through these one by one and talk about what we like and what we don't like, what works, what doesn't. But I think ultimately, and you can let me know if you agree on this or not, Adam. I think like the first thing we should look for is the idea, the concept. And then the second thing would be like the execution and presentation of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So like, idea is always king. We'll go with that kind of. And of course, presentation is always helpful. So we'll start here with Daniels, and he's got an awesome little pack of guys here. All right, you see that well?
Yeah, I see it perfectly.
Awesome. I think this is a great start. Look at, and I wanted to choose this sort of format. Just because this will make like a great portfolio piece. Like it really fleshes out, it's more than one image, and it fleshes out an entire world or scenario. And I think when you see this type of thing in a portfolio, it stands way higher than like, a series of standalone images.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a director can look at that and know that this guy knows how to develop stuff,
Yeah.
Like he actually thinks an idea through from beginning to end. He takes this time to really create a world. And I agree with you. When I look at this, I totally feel like I'm immersed in it. I feel like I can actually take part in this film. I think, Steven. I was watching a documentary on Steven Spielberg yesterday, and he said a lot of people treat artwork or filmmaking, or whatever the case, like here's my stuff, check it out, here, like my stuff. And he said he looks at it from the other way around. He thinks of his audience and what they want. He listens to what the audience wants and gives it to them. He's just the one who executes it for the people. So creating that world that the audience can actually get into and immerse themselves in is what it's all about. That's why people are attracted to artwork, right? Yeah. So who painted this, by the way? Because it's whoever did this nailed it.
His name's Daniel.
Daniel, okay.
Yeah. Like you could totally, like it would have been great to see some interior shots of the ship and stuff like some of the others, but we all have our own time schedules and he probably ran out, but yeah, you could definitely just feel this world, and the design is just great, like especially with these characters, like you could definitely tell they're all from the same universe, and like maybe there's some narrative going on along lines like he's like a salvager, this main character, and he kind of builds and he makes his own crew, so to speak, and that sets up different premises for video games, animations or whatever. So
yeah. I like his personality too. He's kind of got this kind of, it actually makes me think of that Disney film. Oh God, what's the name of that film again? It's not Titan AE. Is it Titan AE?
That's an animated film. I'm not sure if it's from Disney. It might be like an older, some third,
I think it is Disney. It was one of those ones that people kept asking, is that a Disney film? I'm not sure. It's because when they brought 3D into it, and this kind of brings
that was
that
like right at the
a little
beginning.
bit. He's got a bit of a mischievous tinkerer type of attitude about him. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it, and even though like this robot in particular has a sense of personality to him.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like the big muscle guy, and I love how he kind of made little notes on what they do, and it's just great. And then you have like the details of the ship here, that kind of little things like the wear and tear.
Yeah.
The product numbers, like the name scratch, little details that help sell everything. And I think it's also important to note it's not necessarily important to render everything like pixel perfect, but he has like some basic colors in here, and the line work is clean enough and readable. And so overall, I really like the presentation and the idea here.
Same here, definitely. I like the fact too. One of the things that really draws me into this picture is that it's kind of you can tell he lives on it. You can tell he lives on this ship, and this is kind of his livelihood. And every now and then something breaks down, and he's a do-it-yourself type of guy. So he uses duct tape here and a marker there, to kind of slap things together. I like that feel. It's very personable.
So yeah, definitely. Like he even has his own logo here, which I said was kind of like an optional thing, but it definitely helps. Like he could totally, if he was interested in this, go forward and do 3 or 4 more illustrations, all in the Skull and Anchor theme here, and he could totally have like a whole little mini world set up and just great looking portfolio stuff all around. So
yeah, absolutely.
We'll look at Austin's now.
Yeah,
he has his own things going on here. I like how he took the time and kind of built up his backstory here, and he's kind of got an emblem stuff. And this is like definitely a much darker themed one.
Kind of makes me think of I played Masquerade for a while with my friends, and this totally brings me back into that. It's kind of making me want to call my friends up again and play. It's really cool.
Yeah, I like how it's definitely a different take, kind of like almost like a dark gothic spin on Sky Pirates. So I think the presentation is kind of like lacking as a whole compared to like the idea. Just not up to that. I mean, I think these characters like the best parts, and definitely how they're kind of like color coded can like definitely helps. And like you could. Yeah, like if you put like the different color behind these characters, it would say something differently. But like the fact that he's red, he's just like, what's this guy's motives? And this I think the standard issue sidekick chick that's kind of like, she's just like lonely and maybe like, just a bit of a loner and antisocial. And then he's the anti-hero, and he wants to do better, but he's not always sure. And he makes questionable decisions.
Yeah. There's definitely what's bringing me into this piece is the fact that there's a lot of space for exploration.
Yeah.
There's I agree with you saying as far as the colors are concerned, there's very flat colors. And when if you just have one flat color on top of anything, it flattens the image, right?
Yeah.
But that's something you can definitely push this further. I can see that more work was put into the characters themselves and their look, and the color treatment. My personal advice would be, there's 2 facets to creating any kind of artwork. There is the quote unquote the design, right, or you can call it the value study or whatever the case might be, the actual design of these characters or environments, and then there's the color. And you don't want to fall short on either way. If you don't have the time to do the color, don't do the color.
That's actually great advice.
Yeah, leave it out. There's no reason to put color in for the sake of it if you don't have the time to finish it, right? If you kept these as black and white or whatever the case might be, they would actually present stronger because people don't question what's not there, right?
Yeah.
So it's yeah, definitely.
I think definitely if you're gonna commit to this color route, like definitely just it needs more in terms of that. Not only in like polish, but outright description. Like if you're describing this character here, I don't know what's happening down here. I don't know at all what she is wearing, so to speak. It looks like it could be like a scarf and maybe some type of armor. And there's like a subtle religious tone to all these as well, which is kind of cool. But I think definitely having like a rim light and or just outright a secondary light source on her would, go a mile with this. Just Dave Raposa does this really good. He has like the one kind of back color and it, rim lights it. Then you'll have like one main color that's just kind of like, this is not how you'd execute it, but like one color that hits like here and here, and just to definitely like describe, the character as a whole. So just to consider for the future.
This is a very good example as well of how you can, of character development. I mean, Tyler and I, both of us we're discussing a few character designs I just did. One of the things, they were, just so you know, there are demons and stuff like that for you listening. Kind of demon zombies type of thing. Now, what made those characters work, in my opinion, was not the design. it was the story behind them, because I made a point for every one of those designs to make it personal. Every single one of their emotions or their personalities was a reflection of something I could relate to in real life. They weren't just cool characters. And if you look at these guys here, the design is fantastic. What's missing is the story, exactly like you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who are these guys, and how do they relate to, if I was speaking as the artist, how do they relate to me on a personal level?
Yeah.
And although design is something like art and design are something it's a very intuitive thing, because you're thinking of aesthetics, you're thinking of form, you're thinking of facial structure and shadowing and all that kind of stuff. But even though it doesn't change anything in terms of difficulty to paint emotion or expression, it adds, that's actually what grabs your audience. Mm-hmm. It's that I love his personality. People will relate to the personality first and foremost. So when we look at these three characters, I see three very distinct, physically different characters. But emotionally, they're very neutral, all three of them. Now,
Yes.
You can be dark and religious, right? You can be dark and gothic and religious, which is a fabulous template for emotion, right? But breathe that bit of depth into it. What kind of dark is it? What kind of somber? What kind of emo? What kind of it is it? And think about an event in your life, because if you can paint it, it means you feel it. But that's not necessarily translating through to your finished product. Get that facial expression in there, and that's what's going to grab people, And that facial expression
Absolutely.
is actually going to help design the character and the clothes and the aesthetics and the setting, because he's a reflection of his environment, right?
Yeah, generally, everything almost is a product of their environment, whatever they kind of originate from.
Absolutely.
And whatnot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room to explore here. And then I think the ship design is fair enough. Again, it not quite at the presentation level that it could be, but the idea is here.
The research was put in. It's just a question of putting all that research into the finished product. Like even if you look at his crest, the Nemo me impune lacessit.
Yeah.
I was curious if he made that up or not. So I went on Wiki, and sure enough, he looked it up. That actual quote is from, it's a Latin motto from the Royal Stuart dynasty of Scotland, and it means, "No one cuts me with impunity." And that actually, if you think about that sentence actually sets a tone. It's rebels, right? These are rebellious people. They're fighting against society or politics or whatever the case might be, and that is an incredibly powerful starting point for how to further develop your character, right?
Yeah. As we mentioned, all the fundamentals are here for the structure wise to build off them, like the core idea. It's just kind of pushing everything further, like the world and environment move shots. You don't have to paint this pitch black for me to kind of get the vibe that this is like a dark world and setting. And I think a good example to reference on that would be like the Darksiders games, for instance, which are kind of very dark and moody, but they're so filled with color and life, and it. I don't know if we can bring it up here in a second, but it does definitely gets the idea across without kind of being so stark and stiff.
The eyes don't perceive. We think we see colors as flat colors. That's just our brain's way of simplifying what we're looking at. Mm-hmm. And we've spoken about this before. I know many times. It's color is a vibration. It is a movement. And if you want a very good example of that, check out the works of who you probably already know is Nathan Fowkes.
Yeah.
And with his work, there's no such thing as a flat color. Everything is it's like a pointillism almost approach to painting. Dark is a feeling and dark is a color. It's not just a lack thereof. Yeah.
Like here's some moody environment stuff that's very dark, but also, has a lot of color and atmosphere to it.
Absolutely.
You can go very deep with like the blues and the magentas, and then offset that with like the complementary colors of warmer lights. So.
And there's so much more emotion comes out in it if you go back to that. Actually, pull up like that first image you showed me. The one was kind of a pillar with the one right above there.
This one.
Yeah. If you look at that one, if you look at it close up, you're going to see that there's actually turquoises and a little orange by that pillar on the left. There's yellows and magentas in the clouds. Look closely at colors like that, and you're going to see that although on the surface it looks like a gray or a blue-gray, in fact,
there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on, and that's where the energy comes from. And if you compare that to the other work we were looking at, you'll immediately see, there's not enough color. And the mood, it's the same. The goal is the same with the artist, but the result has less power because of it.
Yeah, like here's some of the environment stuff that just.
That's beautiful.
It's very Warcraft-esque, but it works so well. I mean, that's why.
Don't talk about Warcraft to me because Draenor is coming out soon, and I promised myself I wouldn't purchase it for another year. But I know I will, so God, I'm such a tool.
You need to get that like on the go so you can just get it. You play for like 15-minute spurts and then tend to all your other responsibilities.
I have to, I keep myself at below an hour before I get sucked into it again.
Yeah, and I think these weapons are like a cool design as well.
Yeah.
Again, it'd be nice to kind of see some of the metal or the finish on them, but if I'm reading them, just as silhouettes, nice, like I think they work. So.
It's a good start. I mean, the start is there. The idea, the feeling, the mood, everything. At this point, it's just a question of rendering it out.
Spend the time, go back and make this a portfolio piece that'll stand strong.
The hard work's done. Now it's just nerding out and fiddling around with details and having fun with it. The stress level is down at that point, right?
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
All right, now we'll talk about CJ's here, the winner of last month. So he did a lot of work here.
Yeah.
And I realized maybe they're not quite as... Maybe just because this one was such high quality, but a lot of these are just... Like, this is 200% on my screen, so maybe I just downloaded them and they weren't that large. So, just to make note on those. But yeah, I think this is good enough to kind of read everything.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, fantastic job again. Look at this. He has the whole crew, and then the complete set of environment and world design shots as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just really
I'm
great.
Looking at is it possible to scale it up a little bit?
It's going to get pixelated. I'm going to see if I can bring this up.
I'm just looking at the design. I don't care about the image quality.
I'm going to see if I can find a better quality. We'll start
it's just so I can see their facial expressions.
They're really well done. That's why I want to find a better version. Like I think it'll look better on the web browser when I just bring it back up from the post.
Okay.
I just have to find it, but he again went all out, and it shows. Here we go. Zoom. Does this work? Yeah, this is. I don't know if it's any better. No, it's not getting.
You know what? Actually, here, let me see if I can I can zoom in on my browser here. Okay, actually, I have it on my screen here, so I can get a closer look at it.
Okay.
I'm taking it that CJ studied animation, cartoon.
He's working for a startup animation company right now. I learned because he was just featured on my latest episode. So.
Okay, well, CJ, make sure the startup company pays you well because you deserve it.
He really does.
Make sure they don't treat you like a junior because you definitely aren't. Your work is not a reflection of a junior at all.
No, this is definitely like beyond pro level stuff that you would see in any art of book, as we mentioned last month. It's just like the character expressions and it says it all. And he goes the full mile and just renders them all out. I mean, you could get the same idea across if he kind of flat colored it, but he did. He had the time and looks great.
You know what I would say actually, if I could offer a little. I'm looking at the character designs themselves, the facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
I love the range is fantastic as far as their design, silhouette, all of that stuff. I'm really liking it. When I look at their expressions one after the next, if I just kind of machine gun through them one at a time, I don't immediately get a distinct personality. What I would recommend for CJ is when you look at this character, you're not only thinking of them in terms of their own personal aesthetic appeal, but you're also thinking that when you look at each one of these characters, you should immediately know where they fall into the story, who they are as far as, You know, like how will they react to certain situations? What's their personality like? Like for instance, like if we look at the right hand man, he's serious. I see serious and you know, a bit noble. If I look at swordsman, there's a little bit more adventurous, a little bit more kind of adrenaline.
Yeah, I definitely feel that with him.
The cook is a bit pissy, a bit serious. She's kind of like she makes me think a bit of the cook in Ratatouille. You know, like she doesn't take shit from anybody, right? But there's a bit of it, but you can push that. You know, you can push that expression a little further. The machinist, he's an older guy. But what kind of an older guy? He's a machinist, so maybe he's very serious. Maybe he's a
miser or like an old lovable grandpa. It's like there's a lot of options that you can reach.
Like Atlantis, the movie Atlantis,
yes.
Which I feel this very much makes me think of, right? Make a point, CJ, if you get a chance, make a point of going and checking out the character designs, which I'm sure you've done 1,000 times. I have the book actually sitting next to me.
I do too.
Look at how you can look at each one of these characters and say, I know exactly how they. If I was to say the same thing to each one of them, like if I was to tell you, you know, hey, you stink to each one of them, how would each one of them react to it? One of them might go, whatever. Yeah. The other one would immediately start a fight with me.
Really
one of them would go, hey, calm down, right? One would be more passive. One would be more aggressive. Try to aim for a bit of that because there's a little bit too much of a middle ground neutrality through all of them, and my saliva glands are craving a little bit more push and pull.
And that's just about as like advanced as you can get. Like that's so like hard to do, and which is why it's like, you know, such a like a high end genre type thing to like achieve that level of.
So much.
Like I'm definitely like 100% middle of the ground with all of my character designs, and it's like just something I haven't been able to devote enough time to as well to kind of push my characters to that, you know, degree of character, you know, so to speak. So it's
that's what takes the most time.
It's not easy.
That's what directors keep bugging you about when you're working in a studio. Make him more like this. Make him more like that. Right? It's the expression that people are really looking for. Right?
As well. Yep. Definitely. And you know, I think the weapons are just very standard issue, and they work for like a first pass silhouette. You know, a director would approve them, then you just kind of go through and render them out. But yeah, I think that's fine. We don't need to really get into them.
Yeah, really. Well, a musket sniper rifle, I think, is very cute.
Yes.
I'm liking that.
Blunderbuss with a scope. And I think these scenes are also all kind of fantastic, and they kind of have that kind of dark, epic type of feel to them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. But I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I like the fact that you have it on a slight angle.
Yeah.
It's feeling a bit too heavy on the right. Like, you know how you...
Yeah, that's...
You actually put a bit of a lean on it to give it some movement and stuff like that. I would be curious to see if the ones on the opposite side of the image, if they leaned a little bit in the opposite direction to create a little bit of visual balance. Because it's feeling like my head's kind of pushing over a little bit too much towards the right, especially with the ship, the focal point of the ship, just again pulling towards the right side of the screen.
Let's see if I can find it. I think even a slight skew of the scene will start to help that a lot. Like if
probably, yeah.
Apparently it's not working.
Okay. It's on the background. You just have to double click on the background.
Oh, okay. Like if we're just to do this and edit transform and skew it, like within the boundary, you know, the bounding box of it. Like if you have some of this side start leaning towards, you know, for like a true 3-point perspective, I think it'll kind of help out a lot, and then just straighten out that a little bit.
Yep. Right there, that's all it needs.
Yep.
But to CJ, it's like if a director was to say that to CJ, it's like, can you skew those buildings a little bit? And it's like, oh, you mean you want me to repaint it from scratch? Oh, okay.
I had that same conversation this week with one of my directors.
Oh God, I don't even want to hear that.
My only reply to him on the Skype call was like, so you want me to start this over? And I'm like, inside, of course, I'm internally like flipping out, and he's just like, no, take it easy. We can just do this. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
It's just like that. I think that helps a lot. I mean, it's getting there. And I think, you know, it's some like extra atmosphere or kind of like smoke, or, you know, just that stuff cinema guys do to kind of help push some of the space around an environment so it's not like all one kind of dark area. And that's also, I think, why it feels just a bit heavy as well, because of the value structure over here. It's dark over here too, but I think it just maybe a little too dark behind here. Like you could have like, what is it called, where they have that unseen light where you would just have like a structure or some forms, but then you have like a hidden light source. I mean,
oh yeah, like
hidden light
something
source. I think maybe it's green or something, but you have like maybe some like what is that awful type of attempt to paint it, but you have it like underlit by green because it's coming from behind these buildings basically. I think would be
you're bringing out that three-dimensional form and adding a little bit more color to the scene in one shot,
something like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree with that.
And then see if we can kind of gauge the rest of these things. And I know he put a lot more detail than we'll be able to tell. This isn't like a low YouTube quality thing. This is really pixelated for us just because the image I downloaded was small. But I think the engine room works fantastic in terms of a setting. Again, I think some of the gears just might feel a bit too floaty, but I think they work in defining, again, the mood of the scene. It might be not structurally sound in terms of like how it would work or function, but it sells the mood, which I think is important.
Yeah, and people cheat in film all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the cinematic for Azmodan, for Diablo 3 Azmodan, his Azmodan's body could not physically accomplish a lot of the things that happen in the cinematic. If you look behind the camera, Azmodan's butt is going right through the floor, right?
Yep.
So that kind of stuff, to my opinion, when it comes to that kind of stuff, is if it works, it works.
Yep.
And you got to cheat. When one of my first animation jobs in 3D, I completely took apart a 3D rig, and the riggers, almost had a shit. They lost their minds. Like, what did you do? We spent like 2 weeks on it. I said, yeah, but I can't move this rig. Sure enough, the animation did extremely well, and they got a lot of respect for that animation. So I was like, what needs to be done needs to be done. Those gears don't bother me at all. I find it's a very nice aesthetic, and it adds kind of this. It's a very interesting and original way to place those gears. Places you in this very huge setting.
I do like how it bounds, like it vignettes the scene too. Yeah, I do like that.
Absolutely.
I just blew this up for a quick sec because I think this is another scene that I can say the exact same thing almost in terms of the lighting with this is to have some off-camera lighting, maybe just like some red glow, just like maybe like on the top of there, like there's a light, those exit emergence, some kind of like lights up on the ceiling or something that may just kind of accent just a few of these edges behind these dark characters. I think it would look really well against some of these kind of cooler blues and greens and everything. I think it would just look great like that. It might be a personal taste, but I think it's a great scene overall.
That to me would be the number one critique I'd give it. It's like maybe even a boiler room or something like that, right? Suggestion that because they're in the cockpit area. But I mean, that of course depends on where CJ wanted to go with the design and stuff, like how these ships are powered type of idea. But you have a boiler room downstairs, so there's that. But yeah, no, just for the sake of having a little bit more form to those characters, because just having too much of a silhouette does flatten it a little bit, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So moving on now.
Good work, CJ.
Good work as always. Here we are. Another great entry. Blind Justice, and I let the in the original template for this. I definitely included this box because I think definitely as a visual artist, it helps when I'm going to create something from scratch. If I kind of go in and write out, like literally like as much of the description as I can, and that'll help me go into it when I draw it to visualize it all much better instead of staring at the blank canvas.
Well, think about it like how artists, if you go like artists that work on, Magic the Gathering and stuff like that, artists that have been around a little bit longer, guys that are now in their 30s, 40s, 50s and stuff like that, all of their inspiration was based on fantasy novels, right? Yeah. I grew up when I was a kid reading Ravenloft and Dungeons and Dragons and all that kind of stuff. And as artists, it's so easy to visualize stuff when you're reading.
Yes. That's a much better way of saying it than I just tried to put it. But yeah,
but you're spot on, right? It's you write that little, you get into this, and it's so easy to write a story. It takes you 10 minutes, and you just sit there and write something out, and you can really, it's almost like like using that Disney magic wand. You just instant painting, right?
Yep.
And at that point, it's just a question of fleshing it out. I very often, when I'm working on a scene like that, just write out a little script and try to stay true to it, because your imagination is quite epic. And being able to represent that in a painting is a challenge, because you realize it takes a lot to put that much content and storyline into a scene, right? But try your best to stay true to it.
definitely, and that's one of the few advices I always give when someone asks, and because you don't hear a lot of that. It's like, how do I just get, something rolling? It's just like, well, just take 10, 15 minutes and write it out.
Yeah.
And it kind of funnels your focus. So, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it funnels it. It gives it depth. It gives it, it puts more meaning into things. It gets your visual mind working like 10 times stronger than just sitting there and going, okay, I'm going to start with a shape and see where it takes me, right? There's so much more. There's so much more you can feed into your imagination when you do something like that.
But yeah, I like how another thing I wanted to mention with these characters, I think they work well in terms of their design and their role they play. Like, you can definitely instantly kind of catch that vibe. But one of the shortcuts that he took, and which is fairly obvious, and I wanted to point out, was that he, there obviously was some copy and pasting of just, photographic clothing reference on there. And I think that's a common thing you see in the, particularly in film concept art.
Right.
Because, on some, like, I have the Hobbit art book here and like the Thor 2 one. And you can definitely tell they just take set photos of like some of the characters in there, and they just kind of photo bash them, and it gets the idea across. But I think that's more or less common in like a video game type of environment. But it just is something I wanted to mention.
Yeah, no, it's definitely worth mentioning. I'd say where that can limit I'd love to use the name of this artist.
Let me find it. I swear I wrote this out. I just want to double check, but yeah, go on what you're saying. I'll find the artist.
Here, I got it. Michael.
Yes.
All right, Michael. Every time I say Michael, I think of Lost Boys. Where this can limit you, Michael, is in your pose. When you're doing different characters and stuff like that, it's not only important to have, like, you have the costume design down beautifully, you have the body structure beautifully. I like the heavy feet on the male characters too. I think that's really cool.
They all wear size 15s.
Yeah.
Love it.
I love that. But what's missing, I find, is that all three of them have a very similar posture. And that posture is hugely important. People are recognized immediately through how they carry themselves. Imagine yourself walking down the street and you see your buddy walking down the street, right? How he walks, how he carries himself. Does he keep both of his feet parallel? Like, does he actually point his toes forward so it gives him a kind of a goofy walk? Or does he have a little bit? How does he carry his weight? Is a reflection of his personality. And aside from with the support character, aside from that little bit of a slouch in his shoulders, all three of them are pretty straight. Right?
Yeah, like let me see. I think I read somewhere. So don't quote me. Like, if you're drawing like a line through the hips, the shoulders, and like everything, if it's all kind of perfectly straight, then there's definitely room where just set it up for like next time if you're drawing like the stick figure that there's this curvature and stuff like that. You go in. And
very rarely stand with the rule I go with. This is something from cartoon animation and stuff. Is your center of gravity is always your head is always
at the center, right?
Or the center of gravity. So if your head, like in her case, because her head is, we make a line, her head is actually located between the 2 feet. That suggests that her weight is equally distributed on both feet, right? As soon as you shift the weight over onto one of the hips or the other, or one of the feet or the other, her head will shift over. And
then the shoulders.
The hips and the shoulders have to tilt at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? By playing with that, you are tapping into immediate tools you can use to bring out character. What is her attitude? Just because she's leaning on one leg doesn't mean she's chill. It doesn't mean she's relaxed. She can still be alert, but still be leaning on one shoulder. That's how you engage the audience with the face, right? Is she looking at you, or is she looking off into the distance? The lead character very often is somebody who's going to look right at you. He's the one when you walk into the room, you look at him and you go, he's the one who looks at you and says, what do you want? And the other ones are a little bit less engaged. You have to use that body language a little bit to tell the story of who, like, he's the hero, make him a hero. His body language has to be heroic as well, not just his clothes, right?
And I like
build into that as well.
I like how this might be totally accidental, but it can, if you just want to sell the idea of the concept, run with it. I like kind of how this guy and this guy, they each have their hand kind of behind their back. And this might show, this one here says that he might have some manners and he's kind of polite and, you know, he has like a sense of chivalry. This is like, I have a back pain type of thing. Like those subtleties is like what really can bring out your characters. And but just, you know, again, exaggerate all of that. You know, like have him like leaning over and his head's like a little lower like that, and you know, that back is just, oh, you know, and then his face is tilted off to the side because he doesn't have his pain meds yet.
He works hard. He's a mechanic. You can tell by his attire that he's a mechanic.
Yeah,
he's an old guy. His hands are rough. His back, you know, he's got a strong back, but the guy works hard. He works long shifts and it's physical work. So that's going to take its toll on your body after a little while, right?
He just, you can tell he's working for his like son or grandson, a job he kind of got roped into that he can't kind of pass on yet because they don't have someone to replace him, and he has to put at least 3 more years on this ship before his pension comes in. And,
yeah. And he's the type of guy who he's been doing it so long, he doesn't necessarily have the patience to, you know, to get help. Forget it, I'll do it myself. He's the kind of guy who always says, forget it, I'll do it myself, right?
Definitely my grandfather type of vibe there.
Overall, one thing that struck me overall in terms of the overall visual kick of all of it, if I look at environments and characters together, is it feels like it's missing a bit of contrast. If you look at the airship engine room, the one on the bottom right, that's the one that jumps out the most, right?
Yeah, there's definitely the highest sense of contrast here, just in terms of the drama going on. This is like really dark here, and then you got this like this little light spilling over. But I would say, in terms of that, not if I'm just running with one of your ideas. I'm sorry if I interrupted you, Adam. But if we had, let's just say we turn all the lights out in this. Like you have like some corner light coming in here, but if you're gonna do like that type of corner light or just kind of like dappled light coming in, just try to use the composition like more. Like use it more to your advantage. Like have maybe some like not just at the corner. Like is what I want to say. I guess have it over here, but it's describing some of the mechanics over here, and then it's kind of coming around this whole pipe system and the engine, and it's you know maybe it's a ceiling light, maybe it's not. Oops, you know it's kind of coming through over here. It's highlighting that door because I know at least with the video game design, if there's like to kind of guide the player through it in terms of level design, like the exits and stuff, they're always strategically lit, and that sort of thing. Like, and I like how there is a cool light over here too that you can kind of accent you can describe a lot of the room just with you know the corner details. Like you could have like a cog over here and just catch some of that light to come through the corner. You know, there's a lot you can do with this.
Well, that's what you're saying is very important because it's true. There's a significant difference because I've done both. I've worked in game and film, and how game concept artists and film concept artists use light is for similar reasons but different functionality. Like in a video game, you're generally using light to lead the viewer's eye through a scene, right? So you're kind of giving you visual cues of where to go. Whereas in a film, it's more of a staging issue where they want to where the director's saying this is where the action is going to take place. This is where to look. This is where the acting's happening. And when you're producing your work, think about what context it's for. If you're doing this for a game, you're thinking of, okay, well, the character is going to walk around the pipe. He's going to come down the side. He has to touch that gear over there to open the door at the end of the hall. And you're kind of leading the viewer's eye through the scene so they know where to travel, right? Whereas for a film, you're saying, this is my scene, and the acting's that my character is going to jump through this vine and land on that pedestal. So you have to think, okay, that's where my staging's happening. That's where my highest point of contrast is going to be. So the viewer knows exactly where to go. And you can go opposite that and say, Mike, I want this particular area to be hidden in shadow because it's kind of a subterfuge type of scene where my character's coming in out of the dark and grabbing somebody. So I want to make sure that the staging includes darkness. Right, you're kind of thinking you're not just thinking in terms of lighting a scene. You're thinking about the functionality and the purpose of it. Where's this going to end up, right? So that's something to take into account.
Everything's good. Everything turns out better when you always kind of revert back, at least mentally, you know, before you put a lot of work in a scene, is does it serve its function or purpose? And
Yeah.
once you understand what the ultimate purpose of a scene is, then you know, like the purpose of this is it's an engine room. But furthermore, are you going to consider the space that a player or the actors could move around in? Like, just kind of think things through in terms of that, and it starts to layer your thoughts, and you can just basically build a scene like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
This I think is functional, but just kind of lacks a sense of character. This middle one, it's just kind of too plain Jane, you know.
Yeah.
Too a little too straightforward, I guess.
Too many neutral colors, I find. Yeah, there's a lot of different. I like the varying uses of brown and gray. That's nice, but in my opinion, a scene generally needs a punch, right?
Yeah,
every scene needs a little
some
punch
gold
to it.
rims here.
So adding a little punch of color, a red somewhere, a nice turquoise or something. You have it's a nice base tone. What very often people do is they go the opposite extreme. They go too saturated all over the place, and it creates a bit of a headache scene.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have something that's very neutral, but then you throw in this like turquoise carpet or this red carpet or some decorative elements like Tyler's doing right now, some decorative elements that make it glisten, then you're creating a nice visual balance between calm and exciting. And that visual balance creates something that's very nice. The viewers really enjoy that.
Like you could do what they call narrative storytelling, environmental storytelling by the objects and props that you include around this captain's cabin. Like, you know, you could have like a pile of candy bars here on the dashboard, an ashtray, even some plants. Maybe the guy's a gardener and he collects leaves from all the places he travels. But without putting a single character in the scene, you know, like if you were going to go into somebody's bedroom, it says almost all you need to know about a person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's like you're saying, it's the set was built, but it wasn't yet decorated.
Yeah, it wasn't like set. There's no set dressing.
Exactly. There you go. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, and you know, I think the ship is a great design too. I don't really have much, you know, to critique in terms of that, and I think the scene is, you know, it's fair enough, and it kind of, I think they complement some of this other, I think, which is more important in this case. I think they complement it well. I mean, but you could always just take things and just push them further. I think this is like a great first pass. I do like a lot of this type of stuff lately when I'm doing some environment design, and you know, you get a scene up to this far, send it to the director, and they'll give you feedback an hour or two later, and they're like, do this, and then you just take this to the next level, add you know, another layer of architectural detail, or I think the lighting is fine. You know, you could always just start to mask some of this in like it's in shadow, and then have some of the light just be a little bit more focused almost. But other than that, I think it's a good again, skeleton basically for a scene.
That's the major. I think we're both pushing towards that same thing, that same lesson in this, which I think is take it further.
Yeah, right? Like conceptually, just I like how the execution is basically the same. It's consistent throughout all this, but you know, just take it to the next level.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this is very monochromatic in terms of the highlights, and like there's a clear light and shadow side, but you know, push the colors in each. Get, you know, if this is all your color basically hovering basically around here, start, you know, just nudging it, you know, just a little bit, you know, and you know, dapple, you know, like old pointillism, just you can bring out the colors in it by starting with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the design, you know, like have fun. This is the fun. What's frustrating me about this is that it's right there. It's right at the borderline of this is when art really starts to get fun, is when you have the whole scene. You don't
blocked
have to
out
anymore. And now you can start adding details and little flags and stuff like that. The stuff you can really have fun with. And I'm frustrated because I want to see it so
like
bad.
You could have this, like, you know, add suggestive, like, you know, stalls and like market bazaars all down here, and then up here there's bigger ornamentation. Maybe there's, you know, they have gardens, lush gardens. Maybe they're, you know, maybe they're even like kind of like bluish or purple, like pink foliage up here. Like, I mean, whatever the colors are, but you just need set dressing on all of these, basically.
It's pure set dressing. It's just have fun with this, you know, start having fun with the detail of it. That's it. That's all I really got to say. I mean, because technically they're all solid. You've got the perfect foundation in all of these cases, including characters. The weapons, I'd say, are nicely fleshed out.
Yeah, it's probably some of the best weapons we've seen so far, maybe the best in terms of...
Very original, too. I really like that. But just take that design and contrast. Remember, like we mentioned this before, when you're looking through the thumbnails on Google or Mozilla, Firefox, or whatever the case might be, your eyes are always going to grab that one that has the highest contrast. And as artists, we always have to remind ourselves, push a little bit further, get that contrast, get it that visual appeal going on. Because without it, people are just going to overlook it. And you don't want people to overlook that much beautiful work. You want them to stop and appreciate it. So that's how you pull them in, you know?
All right. Now we have John's.
The Intrepid Renegade Skyhawks.
I love this. I love this presentation, and I love the character he's bringing to some of these guys here.
Yeah, he's definitely pushing expression.
This definitely gives me like a '90s role playing game type vibe, and that's at the heart of my passion right there. I love that stuff. So
that's awesome.
I'll be a sucker for this one.
I think, just in the same light of what we were talking about before, I think overall, the design is beautiful. There's no question about it. And you really have taken detail to a nice level. Contrast. Overall, there's a lot of contrast missing in a lot of these pieces.
The
paper itself the texture of the paper almost overpowers the characters. So just be conscious of that.
Maybe I'll just silhouette them by maybe a glowing lighter tone that's a bit more flat just around them, or
absolutely
a hold lines. Is that what they call it? Or an outline of either light or dark just around them will, I think, make them pop in terms of that. But
yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking ambient occlusion. You know, like if you look at the girl, the chef. With
the dark little shadows.
Adding some darkness, let's say, between her chest and her inside of her shirt, like inside that
right
vest
in
that's
here.
going to open up, there'd be a nice opportunity to add some blacks in there or some very dark values to help push it.
And I'll kind of and that means it's like grabbing this with a lasso tool, grab like an airbrush, and then just drop that on multiply, pick the local color of that, the blue, and then you can get in there like this.
Yeah.
And start adding a lot of contrast, to the character. And
look at how much that pops off the page.
And then, again, with this outer jacket, it would be a little more subtle here because the fabric's lighter. But basically, you maybe lower the softness on this, and then just kind of get it right there. When we say occlusion shadows, we mean like the darkest darks, like the light, the lack of light in between the little spaces.
Yeah, like where the light photons have the hardest time getting to. Little cracks between your hands if you pressed your hands together, where your foot meets the floor. That would be a good example. Inside the cuffs of your shirt, right? Exactly like Tyler's doing right now. And you can push the darks and push the highlights a little bit more too, so that what you're doing is you're using value to really create a three-dimensional form that really pops off the page, right? If it's too neutral, if the values are too neutral, if we actually look at these images in black and white, if we looked at this page in black and white, you'd see just how muted everything feels, right?
Yeah.
See how it feels muted, where if you look at the girl, she's starting to pop a little bit more. Yeah. The captain at the top, because of his dark hair, grabs your eye.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
Yeah. Well, all of those characters and all of those objects on your scene should all be balanced with that same level of contrast. Otherwise...
this guy's very, this is all kind of in a similar value range. Like if we were just to take him, select him like this, and if I did a levels adjustment, just for a quick example, and we started pushing the contrast up, it's already starting to read better.
Look at how much he pops off the page now. You're really starting to feel like this character's jumping out at you. It pulls you in to look at him. And if you compare him, look at the strategist next to him, since you haven't yet color adjusted it. Look at the difference between the two. See how much one grabs your eye and the other one doesn't? It's pure contrast. A little levels adjustment, job done. Right?
Absolutely. That's the quick fix. And again, just maybe adding, and I forget to do this too because I generally save highlights for last. It's just like a habit I've always had. So sometimes I forget, but if you just go through and add it's harder with these lower res images, but add, and not on a multiply layer, but if you could add little highlights to things, it'll start making things really pop.
Yeah.
Especially like on, like on the hair, and bring it up to here. Don't go pure white ever. Then you'll start looking like pastel-y, and
yeah, it flattens it. Yeah,
flattens it. But little highlights can go a long way. And I know highlights are generally handled differently depending on the material. So having material to reference definitely helps as well. But especially when it comes to metal and cloth, it's so different. But I think like this guy has great contrast in terms of highlight on the hair and stuff. And then you can just push that further by, selecting the face and adding shadow underneath the hair. And it'll really give it some form.
Yeah.
Multiply. John's been improving so much. I've been seeing his posts like over the last three months, and he's getting so good at this.
I see, like, when I look at this work, I think whoever did this is very ambitious, Yeah, there's so much work and thought and research that went into this work. I mean, I look at this and I go, you know what, man, you deserve respect for this work. That's why that's why we're both taking the time to really offer them some good feedback on it, because that whoever's hearing this feedback is going to take it and really use it.
And it'll be, I hope it's as valuable as we would possibly make it, and worthwhile their time and effort. So I think this scene has the most contrast out of all these. So
yeah, definitely.
I think the only thing I'd really start push is if the light's coming out here, have some cast shadow from these windows on like, this pure light area. I mean, however it may look, kind of. That's where 3D really helps, and it's almost like cheating because it just does all the work for you. Where the light is, but if you're like me and don't use 3D a lot of the time, you just guess. But even the idea that you're seeing some shadows here helps a lot.
Yeah, the light and shadow, pushing the light and shadow, definitely.
And then again, we said this a lot with these interior scenes, and you have it. Just push the edge, the rim lighting on some of these things just a little bit more back here. Still multiply. That's why I'm not drawing anything. Just to describe some of that railing better, and then the hose. But you have the idea. Just push it a little further.
And if you compare it to the one on the right, just to the right of it, the girl at the console thing, that's where I find contrast you'd benefit the most from it. For instance, things that are closer to your eyes generally tend to have more contrast. So if you really wanted to push the depth of the scene, all you have to do is add some depth to those pillars, which I think you're already doing, Tom.
Yeah.
Just add some depth to those pillars, and immediately look at how that sucks the scene.
Absolutely.
Immediately she gets sucked right into the distance, which is awesome. Just by adding that and a little bit, and you can cheat a little bit and add a little bit of contrast around the girl too, because she is a focal point. Right? So have that light, have a little rim light hitting off the top of her from that light source above her head. Have that cast a shadow on the floor, and that'll help pull your eye to her as the focal point. Because otherwise she can easily get lost into that lack of contrast.
Which that can happen like to many of us really easily. But definitely have that be the brightest. But I think all around it works as a scene. It shows that the ship's being powered by the power crystals, and hopefully they're not the same ones Napoleon Dynamite's brother ordered online to power their time machine, but this scene I think is really cool. This type of perspective gets really difficult when in terms of like 3-point perspective and ellipses. Nightmare for almost anybody that's especially going to do it by freehand. But I think this just needs more something to hold it in the like some kind of fulcrum to hold the composition in the foreground a little bit.
Yeah.
Like I'd almost add a little bit of atmosphere here. Why is that on darken mode now? Like just to push this a little bit back, and then you can go back on top of that. I mean, whatever it may be, and add something in the foreground. Whatever, like maybe another rock formation. Maybe it's got a character looking like a little scout guy. Like you have like a rock, or maybe it's like a tower, and maybe just a couple characters just sitting up here like that, watching, checking things out. But I think overall, it's again found a great foundation for a scene.
Yeah.
You could always, it's very what's the word I want to use? Like, there's a lot of global illumination going on in this, and the lighting is very straightforward. So again, if you just always wanted to push the drama in it, get kind of creative with the contrast.
Mm-hmm. Contrast, atmosphere, you know, like detail it out, you know, nerd out with it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But no, just by adding that little bit of depth in the foreground, I think overall contrast is a big thing. The last little thing I wanted to mention is the facial expressions of the characters. You notice that captain, chef, pilot,
they look like the same guy almost.
Well, they have the same smirk. It's the same kind of deviant smirk.
They're brothers.
I know that. Trust me, I understand exactly where you're coming from. I'm from animation. I know what it's like to like have your kind of favorite facial expressions, you know, or have like people like drawing hands in a certain way because you know that's the coolest pose. But everything has to be in context, and we want to, as your audience always wants to see a uniqueness between each character. So if we see a repeated element, a very strong repeated element, and a smile is a very powerful part of the facial expression, it draws in the attention. If we see too much of that, it kills the value of all of them as a whole because they lose their uniqueness. If just the chef, for instance, had that had that smile, but the other ones had a different smile, a different type of mouth shape, then that gives them all something unique. But because there's a bit of a redundancy going on, it takes away, it detracts from where you could take this, you know?
Yeah, and that can be resolved by simply getting a mirror and, you know, making faces into it, or just researching expressions and just gathering a little bit more reference in terms of that.
Oh yeah, it's not hard.
It's definitely my weak area, but that's how I would resolve it if I were about to do that.
Yeah, well, feel it. You know, when you're doing facial expressions, feel it. Feel the expression. Like, actually, this is what I tell my animation students. Get up off the floor, stand up, and do it.
Yep.
Feel what it's
Feels
like to be a deviant person. Getting up, like, I'm going to make sound effects. I always teach with sound effects, you know, but if you get up, if you're doing some, like, Gollum type of, you know, get up and really make your muscles all tense up in your neck and your back and, you know, crinkle your face. Feel how that messes up your facial expression, then take a mental snapshot of it and draw it, you know, and that just takes work. And when you can get that kind of personality out in your characters, people go, oh, cool. Everybody nerds out over that stuff, you know? And
you bring a sense of energy to it.
Oh, God.
Like, the famous illustrator N.C. Wyeth is known for doing this. I mean,
oh, yeah.
He would act out, get costumes, and do every character he illustrated. And if you don't know who he is and you're planning on illustrating and stuff, you need to look up his work. But I'll just quickly show it on here for a minute. But
perfect example. Yeah.
Simplicity is the key of brilliance when it comes to this type of stuff. Everything is simple, value structure, and you know, color. But he would act out all these characters because he has like a lot of action kind of going on in a lot of these scenes. So there's
just beautiful.
Such a great sense of movement in his work. Look at that.
Look at there's one that you notice. There's one that fantastic. There was one that you keep scrolling past that Viking screaming. If you scroll up a little bit,
a little up. Oh, what is this?
On the right. Look at how that grabs your attention.
Yeah.
See? Look at how that grabs your attention. Why is he grabbing your attention? Because he's feeling something. And when he feels it, you feel it, right? And that's what I'm not saying all of your characters need to scream at the top of their lungs, but there's an emotional pitch in that piece that's very engaging. And when you're doing character designs, don't be afraid. Christopher Hart, a well-known cartoon animator, he still makes YouTube videos and stuff like that. But I grew up on his books, you know, like how to draw animation and stuff like that. And the way he described it, something that always resonated with me is design your character, and then blow it out. You know, so basically, take your character, design it like your characters as you've designed them, and then go whack with them. Take all of those things that you did and push it further, make them slouch more, make the expression more, you know, get more.
Just exaggerate as much as you can, because then when you go back and do a second pass and refine it, then things naturally just tend to tighten up a little bit anyway. So when you're getting the initial line and feel of a character, definitely over-exaggerate.
Absolutely. And funny enough, the human brain, when looking at 2D, when they're looking at painted or drawn characters, the human brain needs to see exaggeration to fully feel that character. For some reason, what you can do in real life, you can't. What works in real life doesn't necessarily work in art, where you need to push it. You need to push the expression further. People don't necessarily emote as strongly as they do in art. There's a very good example. Look at the
of contrast, and you can feel the weight that they're putting on each feet when they're kind of like lumbering forward here.
Yeah, and it's that exaggeration that's making you feel these guys pushing forward, right? And his chin. Look at the guy in the foreground on the right. Look at how his expression, the neck muscles, the cheek muscles are, and even the guy on the right. You can see that he's pushed their chin forward. All of them, actually.
Like I think if any one of us, including the viewers, were to get on the floor and act this out, like you would naturally, you wouldn't overextend quite this much. But the fact that it's slightly exaggerated in their determination here, it shows in the illustration really well.
He's painting feeling, right? And when I look at this, I'm thinking of these guys going.
Yeah, you can hear it.
Yeah, you can feel that march, and the march is actually not only in their exaggerated diagonal pose, but it's in their jaw. It's in their chin. Their chin is pulling forward. They're pushing forward, and this is not literal. This is painting with feeling. It's painting what something feels like rather than what it literally looks like, right? Excellent example. Got that.
And I noticed that that just because it's relevant. Some of my students that I mentored this week, when I was doing demos for them, they're like, I can almost start hearing them laughing because I'm not even thinking about it, but I'm doing a demo and I'm making sound effects for everything I do, and they just think it's a riot. And I don't even realize I do that anymore. It's just like even with like environment stuff, I'm making the sound effects of the wind, the birds, the trees. Like it's something I try definitely not to do on a typical YouTube video, but if I'm doing it, if I'm definitely just giving like a live demo, then I tend to lose myself, and that's what happens.
The sound effect tells us that there's 1,000 words. I totally, I'm guilty of that too, unfortunately.
All right, here we go. We're on the gills.
Oh, love it.
I like a lot of what's going on here conceptually. Like there's definitely some good ideas going on here.
I love the fact that this is the first that I've seen that takes a very modern. Are you getting an echo? I'm getting a bit of an echo in my.
I can lower the volume. It might be that on my sound, so you're not hearing yourself. I'm not sure.
Just want to make sure it's not that distracting for me, but I just want to make sure it's not distracting for the people listening. I love the modern twist to this.
Yeah,
I love that. I really love that. And the image that just kept jumping out at me is that bottom right one. God, that's a powerful composition.
Yeah, that's really well done, and that's like that could be out of Star Wars for all I know. It just looks. You can feel the power in that, and these are big industrial airships, and that's why I chose Sky Pirates and left it at that because there's so many directions you guys could take with this. So I just wish in terms of presentation, if maybe these would look all better if it was all black and white or all sepia tone, just in terms of just in terms of consistency.
It's hard to say. There's a lot of power in the presentation and the fact that it's you've just used neutral tones. I like that. The only thing that I think is lacking is all of that. I love the very organic, loose line work, by the way. I'm really a big fan of that. I love the fact that you were very it's very unanal. It's very free artist. It's a very freehand type of
there's a natural flow to it. That it doesn't look like he labored over it.
No, it doesn't look like that, and it has a very kind of comic book style to it, a very comic.
This is definitely something I could see in a graphic novel easily. Yeah. So I think his line work is definitely a strength for him.
The line work is definitely strength. What's difficult for me, what's making it difficult to distinguish it, it's hard to tell one element from the next because it's all the same tone. Yeah,
I think just if you're going down this path, just take the shirt, select the shirt, or just have a tone for the skin, a tone for the
just offset the tone.
Offset the tone so we can read these shapes really clearly, like this. Yeah. Like just picking the background color again, just I mean, I'll lose some of your lines because of how I'm paying this, but you know, when you set it up on your file, it'll be fine. But yeah, definitely keep your lines, and then you know you go through his pants, and
It's
then
a
that
2D
just add a
style.
darker tone to this.
That's the thing. It's very 2D. This is a very 2D style of art, which I personally love. A lot of well-known artists in France, like from Les Gobelins,
Yeah, it's,
in France, they really celebrate 2D. They don't get nerd. They don't. Some artists, I mean, go to town with 3D rendering and stuff like that. But a lot of them aren't so concerned about that. They're more concerned with flat 2D images. And these images contain that same level of power. It's just clarity, and that's just a question of playing with values. And by what Tyler's doing right now is not killing your image; it's just making it more readable, right? That's all he's doing, and you're not losing the spirit, the 2D spirit of this artwork, which I personally find what sells it so nicely, right?
absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of details like that are
Little
hard to make out,
details.
you can't distinguish them. Yeah.
And I think the ship would just need a bit more contrast as well, kind of like what we did here. Just you know, again with like the occlusion shadows in I'm trying to find just a little brush, like get in here and you know show the depth within the scene, like that's like really far back. So just those little bits in there. You know, you don't have to go render it out fully, but definitely add another value to this. Like, oh, down here, this is behind it, just because it helps the forms read better, and that's all you really want to do with like a simple 2D style like this is just to get the forms to kind of really be punchy and stand structurally strong.
Yeah, yeah.
But other than that, you know, these are great. And I like the sense of scale in all of these, like a big world.
Oh, it's fun. I keep staring at it. Now, one thing that's kind of jumping out at me is what you've got going off on the left of the image and on the right of the image are two different. They're two different things.
Yeah, two different styles and aesthetics.
That can work for you or against you, because if a director is looking at this, or a client, or whoever it is, whatever you're designing this for, or even for your own project. What would if I was to look at this, if you were to pitch this to me, if I'm a director or whatever, and you're pitching this idea to me, and you're saying, okay, this is my idea for Black Blood, right? And for these Sky Pirates type of thing, I'd be looking at it going, well, which one is it? Is it the ones on the right or the ones on the left? Right?
Yeah.
Because the ones on the right are hyper rendered in 3D. I mean, that looks like a photograph, for God's sake.
Yeah, it does.
The ones on the left, and they're very stylized 2D. They're two different worlds. Now, what would you do? Would you hyper render out these characters, which could work? You could take these and add a lot of realistic rendering to the 2D characters you got on the left, or you can flatten what you've got on the right and make it look more like panel 4, the ship, right? Because panel 4 fits with these characters.
Yep.
The ones which you have on the right.
It's very segregated. And I think initially what caught me to that was the fact that these are simply black and white, and these were a sepia tone. But you take it more directly right there that they are just outright rendered differently.
They're outright rendered scenes and have a very graphic line to it. It's very, which is kind of like respect for you for your range, for your versatility artistically, is the fact that you can get very clean graphic rendering on the right and very loose line work on the left. What happened? I'd be curious to know what would happen if you married those two together. You would. I'm very curious to see what that would turn out, because I can see that by the artist's talent, by their skill level, they could probably do something very unexpected with it, which could be really cool. A
lot, yeah. You should spend, if you have the time, to do some experimenting.
Yeah.
See where they can go. And like a side note, which is a great idea to do with these like type of two-dimensional characters that Dave Raposa again has been doing recently. With he'll flat color it, or even add with the tone. It doesn't have to be color, but if you add like a second layer of cast or shadows on it, and leave the base tone the lighter color, that adds a lot of form to a simple 2D illustration.
Yeah, you're still respecting the 2D medium in that respect.
Like,
and if you can see, look up close, you can see all that delicate line work, the little fine detail line work in there, and you don't lose it. Yeah.
Just apply that to this, and then you'd be there. You're like in such a good place, on a technical scale. Like, you can just really run with it, and your work will just kind of blossom.
I'll mention one other thing about this, just a little quick note, because I know we don't dawdle too long, but one little quick note is there's a rawness to this work that I really, really like. I like especially those characters. Those characters really, cause for me, I come from I'm a Montrealer, but I've been very heavily involved in the Latin dance scene and stuff like that. And for me, one of the things that I love
you
about
are well cultured, sir.
Film, look at Guillermo del Toro. Okay, look at his work, how raw he is. The story, like a lot of Latin films that I love, is the fact that they're not as inhibited by graphic or heavy or obscenity as North American culture is. And that is something very alluring artistically. It's very powerful artistically. It's this ability to just create rawness in the work. And there's a rawness in there that I would say, man, don't lose that. Don't clean yourself up too much, because you've got something going on with that rawness. I don't know why it made me think of Latin filmmaking, for some reason, but it does. It has that feel to it. I would just say, it might be worth looking into that kind of stuff, because I can feel it in your work.
Yeah, there's definitely a presence of it. All right, and finally, we have Marius's scenes here.
Awesome.
Let's have. There we go. That works. A lot going on.
Yeah, no kidding. Marius lost.
He was busy, and I love the effort. And we mentioned this to him a couple times in the community group. Is his ideas are always taking the stage. Like, he can just come up with concepts that are they're really there.
Yeah.
And he does like a high quantity of them as well. He'll put up a sheet he'll post a page of like 30 character heads and stuff, and it's just like, whoa. And none of them are bad.
Yeah.
But again, what we do mention is getting your presentation level up to the level of your actual designs.
This is a perfect example. This is a perfect example of somebody who thinks of content first, rendering after, right? The idea is, think of how much you can do. I mean, for anybody else who's listening as well, look at this artwork and think to yourself, okay, a lot of it's line work, and some of it, could use some visual refinement and push. But from a director's position, from a studio's position, from anybody who needs to use this work, think of how much food for thought is going on in this work.
There is a lot of value to it.
Yeah. There's so much that you can elaborate on. There's so much that you can build on, and that's what's important. Don't be afraid to be creative. You're a creative. This is your job. You're an artistic creative. I was watching a few videos by the artist Noah, a Disney artist who's been working with Disney for a long. I'm not talking about Noah Bradley. I discovered this guy yesterday. Just Noah. I don't know what his last name is, but look up Noah Disney artist, and you'll find him. He's got some great YouTube videos and stuff, and he's talking about he doesn't refer to himself as a concept artist or an illustrator or a designer. He refers to himself as a creative, and that is really the essence of what you guys are, of what being an artist in today's day and age means when it comes to film. Think of how competitive films are in terms of content, in terms of design. We've seen so much cool, quote unquote, cool CGI that we're really getting sick of it. And now what we're looking for is great story, original ideas, something that really transports you. And this is the kind of stuff that the industry needs to grow, right? It's this kind of imagination. It's about being creative. Rendering out, definitely, it could use a little bit of work, but idea, wow, man, you're not holding back.
Yeah, he really is like an idea factory. He just cranks these out. Like, look at this. He's got giant fish bones on this airship, and then he's got tattoos and graffiti on this one, and the skull motifs, and like there's just like so much going on with these.
Yeah, it's so inspiring, And it kind of illustrates what Chuck Jones said at one point. He says, "Never underestimate the power of the spontaneous thought. If you think it, draw it, and don't question yourself. Just frickin' draw the thing, and let yourself do it. Don't." And that stuff is what's going to make people go, "Oh, that's so awesome!" Because you're not just doing yet another pretty picture. Because there's so many people that can do that. People are looking at your work and going, "Your ideas are so inspiring," and people can really go with that stuff. Another one that just keeps jumping out at me is this. I'm moving my cursor on my screen like you can see my cursor. Yeah. It's that bubble floating island thing by the waterfall. I'm really loving that.
I like that. Yeah, that's their. You can see that they reside there. That's their base of operations, and then they head out in the fishbone ship, powered by these what are they? I don't know. Mongolian Yetis or.
We'll have to come up with an original name for those guys.
I know, they definitely need... But you can feel a story in even though presentation-wise it's not consistent, there's consistency in the designs and the setting, which speaks even louder. So that's what's really... That's why I said right off the bat, the idea is the most important thing.
Yeah. I was referring to Les Gobelins before. This really makes me think of... This actually has a very... Where the last artist had a very, I feel, just from my own personal experience, a very Latin filmmaking type of feel, very Guillermo del Toro kind of feel to it. Yeah. This has a very French feel to it. And it's in its very, very original imagination, the creative aspects behind it. I'm almost thinking to myself, when I look at that floating island thing, it's like, what is it? Is it suspended by helium, or what's going on? I'm so curious to know what's going on in that scene. I'd love to see a description of that or something, just to know what the artist was thinking when he did it.
You definitely want to... That's the thing. This is inviting us as the viewer to participate more in these scenes, because it's sparking our imagination and our curiosity to want to know more about all of this. And I think that's what makes, a successful concept.
Curiosity. I couldn't have found a better word for that. It's totally making me curious. I think that's what I like about this the most. Now, as far as aesthetically speaking and stuff like that, I think there's a few pieces here. Well, the ones that are rendered out, at least the line work I wouldn't include because it's just line work, but a bit of depth, to add a little bit of contrast and depth to make that thumbnail stand out on Google, right? Mm-hmm. When you're doing your Google.
That's like the root of it. Is like, is your thumbnail, whether it's on Google, ArtStation, DrawCrowd, DeviantArt, is your thumbnail going to pop against all the others, that it's always going to be like, you never think of it when you're just drawing a scene, but in the context of anyone that's ever going to be looking at your art, it'll have to jump out on a page of 20, 12 other images. So it's always about getting the client's attention, or potential client's attention, and getting that job based off of how how much your image can pop and stand out in terms of content and visual flow and all that stuff.
Yeah, like just looking at that image right there, what could really help enhance it is to push a bit of the reds in the sky and push some of the atmospheric blue or cyan in the waterfall, because there's you have a very good opportunity to bring in some atmospheric mist, some soft blue mist or something like that. And that visual contrast between the cool and warm would really help this image really pop. It would look really nice, especially being by a waterfall. You could not possibly find a more water atmosphere setting than by a massive waterfall, right? So use that atmosphere to your advantage when you're helping it, when you want to help create some more ambiance to a scene.
And I love even the colored, when he colors, this is clearly he colored some line art, and I love the character style on how that works. Yeah. Like it's in terms of a piece of concept art. If that's the purpose, then it nails it, because it probably didn't take him that long to do than fully rendering this out. Mm-hmm. And he's got all the basic colors, and I can basically gauge what the materials are. So this is really good.
Yeah. Well, it's experimental. I see that you have line art next to rendered art. Now I could easily see that character translate into the scene up on the top right, the one with the those creatures pushing the generator or something like that. How would that translate into the scene? Oh, actually, you do. You have him on the bottom left reading a book. Oh, there you go. So that answered my question. Yeah. Really, but I was just curious to see how that would translate, because you have all this nice rendered stuff, and then you have the line art too. How would that and that works perfectly.
I definitely want to see more of this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Again, like we've mentioned before, just push the atmosphere, push the contrast, push the colors a little bit to create a little bit more of visual stimulation going on, and that will make people look at it. And once they see it, they can start to appreciate the content and the story that you're telling.
All right. So we've been running a while. If you had to pick one of these, what is your favorite?
I hate it when you ask me that question.
I know.
I have two that are really jumping out at me the most today. They're all fantastic, but the two that really I find grab me the most are Black Blood and the last one that we just checked out by Marius.
Yeah.
Those are the two ones that I think grab me the most. Mostly just due to visual storytelling, style, all of that stuff. There's a lot going on in both of these.
Yeah, my favorite two as well are Marius's and Daniel's.
Daniel's, okay.
So I think, if we're just going to, for the outright sake of calling it a contest, then we'll name, just for, the sake of naming a winner, you have any problem naming Marius this month then?
Not
since it was our common ground?
Well earned, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well
definitely. Definitely. Yeah, Marius, definitely two enthusiastic thumbs up, man.
For me as well. Yeah. This was a lot of fun, and I wanted to thank you again for coming on and doing this with me. I learned a lot. I'm sure the viewers will learn a lot as well.
As did I, man.
And it's a great break from the regular mundane workday, right?
Exactly. This is a break that was much needed. Much appreciated.
And we are we're about 600 members in the group now. So I know this contest in particular was an exhausting amount of work in terms of subject and content, but you guys want some awesome feedback, from, some people, so like Adam or I that are experienced, submit some things to the contest and just, take a shot in the dark. You never know what you could learn. Practice makes, it's everything on how much hours you're practicing. So labor over a contest and give your work some context. So
I'm learning a whole lot from this too. I mean, my focus in my art is one thing, but